Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go. That's right.
I'm the Reverend Dr. Jamie Mathias, pastor of Holy Family Catholic Church in Austin, Texas. This week, as part of our parish's Theological Institute, we completed a 10-hour course in spiritual theology. During the course, we talked about spirituality, about the way in which people have been spiritual and have connected with God throughout the ages. We talked about how it was that beginning in the 3rd century, some Christians had the idea of leaving behind the busyness of the world, of fleeing the world. Contemptus mundi, they called it, contempt for the world and all its busyness. And so they went out into the desert to pray and to find God. Today we know them as the Desert Fathers and Mothers. They dedicated their lives to praying and to experiencing God alone in the desert. Then along came the monks and hermits who followed in their footsteps and dedicated their lives to prayer. Have you ever thought how nice it might be to leave behind the busyness of the world, to leave behind your family and friends, to leave behind Facebook and YouTube and the internet, yikes, to leave behind your job and all those obligations and bills, even if only briefly, in order to experience a bit of inner peace? Have you ever thought about how nice it might be just to slow down? Our parish's Joy Group, our ministry to the bereaved and to the elderly, ill, and homebound, challenged some of us this week to slow down. It was the 15th of the month, and as is their custom, they gathered to pray the rosary. And actually, they didn't simply pray the rosary, they prayed all 20 decades of the rosary. That's 21 Our Fathers and 203 Hail Marys, if you're counting. It's a spiritual test of endurance, and it invited us all to slow down for a single hour this week. Personally, I look forward to one day slowing down. I'm imagining, for instance, that one day when I'm 100 years old, I'll be slowing down a little. Or maybe even by the time I reach 90, I'll be ready to watch a little TV or to play some cards or some bingo. But did you hear today's first reading? It's the story of a 90-year-old woman and a 100-year-old man, and they didn't seem to be slowing down so much. Abraham was 100 years old when he saw 3 visitors coming in the direction of his tent. How did he react? He ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and then he ran back to the tent and put his 90-year-old wife Sarah to work baking bread. And then he ran over to his stables to pick out a calf and to bring some curds and milk for his guests. Not bad for a centenarian, for a 100-year-old, right? Abraham and Sarah purportedly served a lavish meal for their guests. They slaughtered a calf, and they baked bread with 3 seahs, or about 36 pounds of flour. That was pretty generous for an old couple in the middle of the desert. The French have a saying, gift implies return gift. What was the gift that Abraham and Sarah received as a result of their generosity? One of the visitors told them that the dream that Sarah once had as a young woman of having children would become a reality. Say what? Sarah was 90 years old now. She had never had a child in her life. She was barren, and she was well past the childbearing age. There was no way that Sarah could have a child, right? She laughed, and she had a child. And that's what happens when you unknowingly entertain angels. In today's gospel, Martha was entertaining an angel too. Jesus was visiting her home. And did Martha receive a blessing for all her hard work, for her hospitality, like Abraham and Sarah? Quite the contrary. In fact, while Martha was busy in the kitchen, her lazy, good-for-nothing sister Mary was enjoying Jesus' company. We all know how that goes, right? We're working, perhaps washing the dishes or preparing dinner or doing the laundry or cleaning the house, and we wish that other person would give us a hand, would help out just a little. And so we try to distract their attention from the television or from that video game or from that person they're talking to on the phone, all while it seems they're trying to ignore us. And we begin to stew and to boil with anger. In today's gospel, Martha is reaching her boiling point. So she complains to Jesus, saying, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving?" In today's second reading, the author of the letter to the Colossians gives us a bit of spiritual insight. Sometimes we suffer so that others won't have to suffer so much. That is, sometimes we do the cooking or the laundry or the house cleaning so as to spare others from having to do it, right? Sometimes we do things so that others won't have to do those things. We fill up our own sufferings so that others won't have to endure such suffering themselves. And sometimes we, like the author of today's second reading, even rejoice in being able to help others out like that. In today's gospel, though, Martha would have been happy to have shared a bit of her suffering, to have shared a bit of her work with her sister. And so Martha tells Jesus, "Tell Mary to help me." And what does Jesus say? Does he say, "Mary, will you please help your sister?" No. Instead, he chides Martha, telling her that by listening to him rather than being busy, Mary has actually made the better choice, that Mary has chosen the better part. For centuries, we've looked at this gospel story as a reminder of the need for balance in our lives. Balance. What an interesting word that is. The English word balance actually comes from two Greek words, bis lanx, which literally mean two bowls or two plates. Think back to 8th grade science. Do you remember using a balance? What is a balance? A balance is a measuring instrument comprised of two plates. You place something on one plate, and then you put weights on the other plate until the balance balances. It's actually a great metaphor for life. When we're always active, when we put things only onto one of the several plates of our lives, we begin to lose our balance. When we're always on the go, always busy, we lose our balance. In life, we need to have a balance between rest and activity, between prayer and service, between those values embodied by both Martha and Mary, between listening to Christ and serving Christ in others. Mary sat and listened to Jesus, and Martha actively served him. Amid the busyness of life, are you stopping to listen to Jesus? Are you taking time for prayer and rest and meditation like Mary? Or are you merely living like busy little Martha? Life is about balance. To be clear, life is not all about praying. No, we can't be too busy and active, always running in life, but we also can't spend our entire lives on our knees, which is why the medieval insight of striking a balance between the active and contemplative life was so important. Saint Francis of Assisi, for instance, had the intuition that Jesus' life was about prayer and service. That Jesus retired to the desert to pray, but then he came back to preach and to heal and to be among the people. And so that's what St. Francis tried to do in his life. He escaped to the hermitages to pray and to be alone with God, but then he came back to the world to preach and to serve others. In fact, he even wrote a rule for those who wanted to withdraw to hermitages to pray. In his rule for hermitages, he noted how we have to strike a balance between the active and contemplative life, between being like Martha and being like Mary, between being active like a mother and between just enjoying life like a child. Do you have such a balance in your life between listening to Christ and serving Christ in others? For some of us, if we're like Mary, we may need to get a move on it. We may need to be a bit more active. For others of us, if we're like Martha, we may need to slow down and focus more on the words of the psalmist. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Brothers and sisters, may we strive to live more balanced lives, listening to Christ like Mary, and serving Christ in others like Martha.